Hello and welcome to Rolling with Two. I'm Will, and with me as always is the one who's ready to let the bombs drop.
Sarah.
And today we're doing a two-player perspective and accessibility for Manhattan Project War Machine. Now, if you're curious about our review of the game, you can check out our other video called Rolling with Reviews, Manhattan Project War Machine. Sarah, tell us a bit about this game.
All right. You play as a company trying to support the country's readiness for war. Utilize dice workers to produce resources and build structures that can be used to score you points and give you better abilities in the game. Whoever has the most points at the end wins. All right, Will, so how does the game change for two players?
So for two players, it's the number of rounds you'll actually play. That's actually marked on the board. So it's 6 rounds for a two-player, 5 for a 3, and 4 for a 4, which is actually not marked for on the board. Anyway, that's the real change. There is no bot, so you don't have to worry about nanobombs. Okay.
All right, so issues at the two-player count. Well, it's going to be a bit slower to play because there's fewer follow actions. Do you want to explain follow actions?
Yeah, during a person's turn, they'll take what are called global actions. That's where they'll place their dice on the main board. No one else is placing dice, only that person. And if they put a atomic symbol or a symbol that has a wrench, a hat, or a star, that's the main action. And everyone else gets a follow action, which is a lesser action, or what's equivalent to a lightning bolt action.
Right.
That will make more sense if you check out like our overview video for Manhattan Project War Machine. But what's happening is other players get to do stuff on your turn passively, and that happens just more often the more players you have.
Right. But they did balance it that there are more rounds. So that's kind of what it does well, is at a two-player count, it really feels like you get a lot of game out of it because you're playing more game.
Yeah, the other nice thing is because it's your dice that are being placed on active turns, you also feel like you have a little bit more agency at the two-player count.
Yes. That's kind of it
Yes.
for two-player.
Yes.
All right, accessibility. Okay. I am really sorry to say this, but the instructions are the worst. I mean, maybe not the worst, but one of the worst instruction booklets I've read.
Yeah, they are terrible.
I'm going to start it off. Small text. I mean, I just feel like I'm constantly squinting at this. They packed a lot in. Also, I should say it's a trifold, and I hate trifold rules. It's just, they're very difficult to read to know where to go next, and they're awkward to hold. It would have been much better as a regular booklet with larger font, larger size text. So that's just kind of organization, kind of? Insight, but there's a lot of errors. There's just missing rules and information and stuff that conflicts with what's on the components.
Yeah, so for example, when it's going over our global actions on the main board for the government section, it goes, oh, you can take the harvest action to gain food. You look at the board and there's nothing labeled harvest. There is one that is labeled chemistry, which does give you the pink token.
Yep, that gives you the pink cylinder, and that's what it says in the rules. So, well, the pink cylinder is either food or whatever you make from chemistry. I guess you could make food from chemistry.
It's all Twinkies, honestly.
Yeah,
it's all
it probably
Twinkies.
Is.
And then there's also things missing, like, for example, at the end of the game, it was giving an example of, well, this person will score 1 point for having their resource on this space.
Well, no, it says for having 7 resources.
Yes, for 7 resources.
So it's even more obscure. It's like, okay, so you get points for having resources, but
why?
Why 7? What makes 7 interesting or unique?
Yeah, turns out that if you look, if you go on to BGG, they explain like, oh, well, if you have tokens on the first expansion board for the warehouse, you get 1 point. If you have it on the second expansion board, it's worth 2 points.
Yep.
So it's nowhere in the instructions that's the case.
So going to some kind of good news here, there is a very robust thread going on Board Game Geek, FAQ thread, and they are going in and answering questions. They haven't updated their FAQ document yet, and they haven't revised the rules yet, but they said that they are going to be working on that. So Hopefully at some point you can just go to Board Game Geek and download the new version of the rules, and none of this will be applicable. But for what's in the current version of the box, it's very much a problem.
Yes.
Because this game, yes, is a bit complex, but it should not be made more complex from poorly written rules. So it's just, this is going to be daunting for like the people that I think would be able to enjoy this. That group of people has just narrowed because it's going to take more work, and some people are not going to think that's worth it.
Yeah, and on some parts of the rules, it's just even vague.
Yeah.
So, for example, setting up the tiles for government, commercial, and industrial. It says, okay, take each of those stacks, shuffle the tiles, and put them in their respective sections. It doesn't say what those sections are,
No.
and the board is not labeled with those sections.
You
So-
have to infer from different resources. Like you can infer from the dice and kind of correlate that to some of the tokens, but it doesn't outright say this is the government section on the board, this is where the government tiles go. Like there's very little that tells you.
Yes.
You have to infer, which you shouldn't have to infer, how to set up a game when you're learning it for the first time.
Let's just say this inspired us to do an overview video, which we don't normally do.
Right. So if you are having issues and questions, please watch our overview video. I wouldn't say it's a full how to play, but it tells you how to set up the game, both your personal area and the board, how to go through a whole turn, or like your options for a turn, and how to do scoring, which we felt were the main areas everybody was having questions about.
Yes.
Okay, we kind of talked a little bit about this. Some of the components aren't labeled well. The main board is missing information. So if you're playing in a 4-player count, you play 4 rounds. It's not indicated on the board, but it is written in the rules, so there is at least that.
Yes. On the cargo board, there is on the right-hand side, sideways, a symbol that's the upgrade symbol and 6 money. This is to indicate this is how you flip up the board. The problem is, that's not the right symbol.
No, it's not.
It should be the truck symbol that's on the industrial side, not the upgrade that's found in the commercial section.
Yeah.
So that's just wrong.
Yeah. There is basically a separate action to upgrade the dice boards from your, what do you call it? The tiles that are buildings and your resources. So there's two different actions that flip boards over for the different areas of your player board.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Keeping them separate is very important.
Right.
And the other thing is sometimes they'll have good identifications, but they won't use it. So an example of this is when setting up things, well, the back of the structure is labeled B, and the back of the warehouse is C, and their corresponding boards are B1 through 3, and C1 and 2, and you have A1 and 2 for cargo. It doesn't even mention that.
There's one or two steps that mention the expansion boards, but it never refers to the main 3 boards, and the cargo board, because it's double-sided, doesn't have A on it anywhere.
Right. Even though it definitely is an A board.
It is the A board, but it's not labeled as such. So, yes, there's a lot of confusion where they have attempts at labeling, and they kind of use it sometimes, but not all the time.
But not really.
Yeah, the other thing is the iconography on the building tiles, the structures, they're not explained anywhere. Like, it's most of it is straightforward, I will tell you that. But there are times where they use the same symbol, the equal sign, but it activates differently on whether it's a tile that's activated by dice or a tile that's activated by other tiles. So thankfully, when I went on to BGG and asked, hey, can you make a reference for all the tiles and explain in plain English what every single tile does? They actually came through really quick, actually. I'm really surprised at how fast they made that. So there is a file on Board Game Geek in the file zone for War Machine. So if you're having questions on how something works, when it works, then download that and keep it in your box. Print it out if you like, or keep it digitally.
And again, it's called the structure.
I had the words up, structure tiles glossary sheet.
That's the file you want.
Yes.
That is almost a must to have printed out
Yeah.
and have with your game.
Yep. Some minor issues, because those were really the really big ones. The track tokens for money and victory points are both round. If you don't have severe vision like Will, it's not a big deal. Even for Will, because it's a dual layer board, having any token in the spot works.
Yeah. It's like, I know the bottom track is victory points. I don't care what's there.
Yeah.
It could be the money thing. It can actually be one of the other symbols. I just know that's victory points, so I'm fine.
It was just a little odd to me because they did the pink cylinder for what we think is food.
Our chemicals.
Or chemicals.
Are probably Twinkies.
And then there's the steel I-beam.
Yeah.
So they made those uniquely shaped, but then just 2 discs. So it was just a little...
Which makes sense for the money, because the money is usually round and coins. Yeah. But victory point, they're like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I just give up.
Yeah. The other thing is this is also still pretty minor, but the contrast between the text and icons and their backgrounds, the whole color scheme of this whole game is pretty muted, which is
a choice
that a lot of people make. When you do thematic things, they tend to pick a color scheme and sometimes stick to it a little too much. So if you're playing in poor lighting, some things may be more difficult to read than others, because if you have like a gray text on a medium gray background, there's just, again, not a lot of contrast to make that text or icons pop. I think one of them really got me was the green recycle symbol was on a...
It was a very light symbol, you said?
It was a very light symbol, and then it was on a very light tan, like it was green with brown, but because it's kind of in a very similar family of shades, it blended in.
Yeah, the yellows in the 2 colors.
Right.
Blended.
So it was kind of a at a glance type issue. It took me a few more moments to process what was there, because it took me more time to figure out what was there. Mm-hmm. Then I think, well, this is actually a bit of a bigger issue now. It could just be for us, because sometimes, theme, some people just really don't care about theme. But for us, we felt the theme wasn't really well integrated.
Yeah, a lot of times where we find theme to be helpful is it gives us a narrative, and that helps inform, like, oh, that makes sense for the mechanics to work this way. Mm-hmm. These feel not very well connected. Okay, you're a company helping the country prepare for war. Why am I building government buildings?
And why am I building a grocery store? And why is the grocery store in a government, like, not the grocery store specifically, but when we looked through the tiles, it really felt like there were certain buildings that you would connect with, like, commercial, but they were in the government buildings. Yeah. Or something was in the industrial, but you're like, why isn't that a government building? Like, name-wise, we're not talking mechanics.
just name-wise.
Just the name of the structure. And the reason why this is an issue is then you can't use the name of a tile to inform you of what section it's part of, because it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and then on top of that, speaking of names, we went to the government section. Hey, there's a manufacturing. Weird to be government, but okay, there's a manufacturing. Hey, we go to the industrial, there's a manufacturing. It does completely different things.
And they're named the same thing. So, I mean, that's part of the weird inconsistencies. But when it comes to this theme, it doesn't feel like war is going on at all. Like, the atomic symbol is present, but you're just creating pollution that you can clean up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's like an action that says ammo, and you turn steel into points, so I guess you're making bullets, but
it's not very direct. So here's the thing why this is a problem. The people who want this to be Manhattan Project War Machine are going to be disappointed, probably, because the theme is not very well represented or integrated into what you're doing. It does not feel like you're part of any war machine. I'm not making things to help the government go do war. I feel like this is a basic city builder.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think it would be better as a basic city builder, because it would then be more accessible to more people, because the people who are going to be turned off by this theme would actually probably enjoy the game, but they're not going to pick it up because it's about war.
Right. Even though it's not.
Even though it's not.
So there you go.
So there you go, indeed. All right, moving on to accessibility. For what it does right, the symbols on the dice are all very unique, easy to read. They're engraved.
And they're pretty large dice,
And
too.
they're pretty nice and large. They're very chunky dice.
Yes, this was one of those cases where I could actually feel the face of the dice and pretty much know what was on them.
Yeah,
I don't even need to see them.
exactly. Also, accessibility. The resource board is dual layered, so your pieces rest into little wells, so Will could always keep track of how much of each resource he had without having to ask me. Now, most of the game is open information. Your
Special grant
grant,
card.
that's what it was. It was a
Yes.
gold card, basically.
Trying to get a government grant.
It's supposed to be kept secret, but honestly, no one can actually stop you. So it's written in that partial text iconography-ness. So for like Will, he couldn't parse the information using his closed circuit. So I just read him his cards. Now I think we did it that I read you both cards that were your option. And
Yeah,
you
then I
picked-
chose one. You had no idea which one I chose.
So you still were able to keep it secret.
Yeah, but you could eventually guess, but you were doing enough of your own thing that you didn't even bother remembering what my
Right, and
goal
if
was.
yours is like to get to 15 food, well, I don't think you can get 15 food, but like 15 money, I can't stop you.
True.
And I'm not going to do actions to subvert that because it's not going to help me.
Right.
So there's that. As we said, the company Grail Games is very active on Board Game Geek. They do have an FAQ going, so we do highly recommend checking that out. They are working on rewriting the rules. And they do have that tile sheet, so I will give them kudos that they are trying to make this more accessible. It's just still a problem that it's not in the box, but maybe if they get all this ready, whenever they go do a second edition, hopefully then they can make it all right. That
Yes.
out of the box, it's very accessible. Conclusion.
For 2 players.
I think yes, if you can learn the game.
Yeah, there's a very big asterisk there because there is a lot more effort than there should be
Yeah.
in order to get this game playable.
Now, I do believe we have, hopefully at least, made some resources that will make it easier for people to play.
That is true.
Our overview video, going to BGG, checking out the FAQ. So if you're aware of it, I think there are resources out there to help make it easier. But again, out of the box may be more difficult.
All right. Speaking which, accessibility.
Yeah, there's a lot to overcome. So this is going to be very variable. And the thing is, it's not a vision accessibility challenge here. It's a cognitive challenge, learning the rules. That's the biggest challenge of this game.
Yeah, honestly, I'd probably even call it a publishing issue
Yeah.
because it does feel like this thing got developed to a point, and then whoever was supposed to do the final checks or the final steps
Yeah.
just didn't.
The rules do not feel like they were blind play tested
Right.
at all, because I think a lot of this would have been caught if the publisher, designer, whoever else is involved sat and watched a bunch of people play the game and teach themselves how to play this game and just take notes while this is going on. They would have found where all the issues are and could have made it better. But I've seen this with other games too, where they just don't have the time or they don't make the time, and it shows. It
Yeah.
shows in the rules when you do not blind play test your rules.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right then, Sarah. Then that leads us to our best question is, if you are getting someone to blind play test, what is the important things for you as a designer do?
Well, if at all, get a recording of it. I mean, it's good to sit there and it's good to take notes. You should take notes, but you're going to miss stuff. So I think one of the best things is to ask your participants, can you record it? Now, if they don't want to do video recording, they at least try to do an audio recording so you can hear what might be said. But also if you can get a camera down onto the table, that would be helpful. I think besides that, it would just be take copious notes. And if you can't stay quiet, I would recommend a gag.
Yes, because it is very important for you not to answer questions. If anything, if they have a question and they can't help themselves and then ask, because players will do that, you're like, your best answer will be, what do you think the answer is?
Yes.
And getting their answer informs you a whole lot more on how to write better rules.
Agreed. 100% agree.
All right. And why would you ever roll with just one when you can be
Rolling with two?
If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can reach out to us on the various social media platforms at
Rolling with Two, that's TWO. We're on Blue Sky, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Discord, we have a channel on Tabletop Express. Check the show notes for the invite link.
If you have time, check out the other content Nanaman has found for you, because remember, he's rolling with you.